All right, welcome back to a little bit of a special episode today on Energy Bites. We've got Bella Kelada-Khalil.
Good. Yeah, that was
it?
good.
Okay.
Nailed it.
The events manager over at Midnight Marketing with us today. Thanks for coming.
Thank you guys for letting me come in and yap.
No, I think this will be really fun.
Not every day we have you down from Montreal, so.
And we've got my trusty co-host Bobby Neal here.
What's good? How's it going?
Made the trek up from Southwest Houston.
Yeah. There were a lot of cows out this morning. I didn't see any over here by the office.
Get stuck in traffic?
Yeah.
Not nearly as many over here by the DW office for sure. But no, today's came about because you made a post. You're getting is it a class or a certification?
It's a specialization course right now that I'm taking online on petroleum engineering with AI applications. I have yet to get into the AI applications portion of it, but I'm about like a month and a half in, and I've just been trying to get as much information on it as possible without having a background in oil and gas at all.
Right.
Yeah.
So just doing my due diligence to understand a lot more.
Yeah.
So I think it's great. You're knocking out two birds with one stone, though.
Yes.
Hey.
And I think too, because I don't want to spoiler alert, but like some of the questions, but it's like you have to know the subject matter before you can even get into like the AI data science. So
no, for sure. And so she made a post about it, and I was like, hey, I know a lot of people have a lot of questions around this, so why not just jump on and do an episode about it? So
yeah, this is all about learning anyways, right? We want people to take some stuff away. So I think with her grilling us with questions.
Yeah, we're flipping the table a little bit today. Bella's got a very long list of questions that we're going to roll through, and hopefully Bobby and I can sufficiently answer those for you and everyone else listening to just to learn a little bit more about both petroleum and AI and how they kind of interact and overlap there. So
I'm very excited. I mean, I grabbed a lot of the questions from the Collide post that I originally made, posted about it twice on LinkedIn, posted about it on Slack, asking everyone at work if they have any questions. I also had to harass a few people to ask me questions as well, because I know for a fact no one feels comfortable just like typing it out in the comments. Obviously, I won't name names. I did tell them I would keep this anonymous.
Sure.
But I had someone who is in their 40s and messaged me. He said, "Listen, I've been following you for a little bit. Have never really reached out before, but I'm nervous to actually ask the questions in the comments because I've been here for so long. But there are just some aspects that I don't know about that I want to learn more about. But I feel like because of who I am, the industry." If I were to do that, people would look at me differently. And I'm like, listen, I'm still somewhat new in the industry, so put it on me. I'll ask all the embarrassing questions to you guys.
Yeah. Well, that's fair too. But I mean, I've said it a few times, but when we started this podcast, I was more the technical guy and John was more of the color commentator in a way. But I mean, especially with the AI stuff, it's really kind of been flipped almost because he's been like deep in the weeds on the AI and the LLM stuff. And I've been more like high level understanding what's going on, but I haven't, until recently probably dove in as nearly as deep as they have. So
in layman terms, what would you say your expertise is right now based off of the questions that we're going to go over?
Yeah, so I would say the way we kind of split this is, well, one, AI and ML. LLMs incorporate AI and ML, but AI and ML by themselves also are standalone things. And so there's a distinct kind of difference in some of these things. Machine learning traditionally came about specifically for numerical data, whereas language models are literally language models. So they're on language. They're not on or built for numbers. They're generally not very good at doing much with numbers. In most cases, it's passing off any math to a Python script that the language model writes itself and then does the math in Python and then brings the data back. But
somewhat kind of like what you were showing me earlier as well.
Exactly. So yeah, my kind of role here at Collide is on the data side. I lovingly call myself a data plumber, but that's really where a lot of my background has been over the last, I don't know, 7 years now, 7 years, something like that. But it all came about because it's a means to an end for me of getting answers, right? Like as an engineer, I just want to solve problems. And so data is a really good way to do that. And then I feel like, Bobby, you come at it more from, you're definitely a practitioner on the data side, but you're coming at it from more of the traditional.
Yeah. I think there's like descriptive analytics, predictive analytics, which would be more like forecasting type stuff, prescriptive where you're making recommendations. And then I think now you're getting into like more cognitive analytics almost, right? Like is where it is. And like I've lived probably more in the first two, side of it, which would be more like just data movement and like, reporting, BI reporting, but then also getting into like data science side of it. And I've done a little bit, say with TensorFlow and some of the, deep learning. I always dip my toes, but even still with everything going on, like that foundation you have to build, you have to have good data to get into it. And, I hear all these buzzwords and then I get into an operator, doing some of the consulting now. And it's like, dude, we just want to see this chart updated every day. If that does that, then I'm good. And I'm like, okay.
It's like, I don't need you to tell me all of the terms. Just does it do it? Does it do what I want it to do?
Well, I honestly think that's like a very valid takeaway here for anybody. And it's like, just because there's going to be 20 different ways to do a lot of things, but understand what the actual problem is that you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
Not all the features that someone wants to have, or the way that people don't care how the sausage is made if it solves their problem, right? If it tastes good. And so that's ultimately what this boils down to, is it's like, do you have to use AI for everything? No, you shouldn't, in all honesty, right? Like those are they're tools in a toolbox, right? Like you wouldn't use a hammer to screw a nail or a screw into a wall. Like it doesn't make sense. And so that's how I kind of
hit it really hard. And
maybe.
Hope for the best.
Well, but that's kind of like, right? Like, yes, you could, but it's going to be harder and probably not as clean and slower.
And I'm sure we'll get into some of the pros and cons of where we're like black box versus more explainable and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I think before we get into, like, you're not as far behind as you think you are.
Yeah.
Like, oh gosh,
you listening, like you're not as far as, like, you hear all these things and you feel like you're drowning. You're not as far as behind as you think.
No, it's constantly changing too, right? Like that's the hardest part of it.
Yeah. I think the fun part here too is like, here's AI as a solution and here's AI as an amplifier. Like, and how does it just make me more productive is, I think, a big thing right now.
Yeah. Before we get into it, let's get, who are you real quick?
Oh God.
How did we end up here real fast?
How did we end up here? So, I started at Midnight maybe like 2.5 years ago. I know that Midnight and what was DW at the time now Collide. We were always running in the same circles. Obviously, Tim knows and loves you guys a whole bunch. And then said, listen, Bella, if you're new to the industry, because I've never worked in oil and gas before, have never even had a background in it at all, let alone studied it. He's like, if you're going to learn from anybody, sends me the YouTube page for Digital Wildcatter. He's like, watch these, listen to their podcast, and just go for it. So Energy 101, before it took its hiatus and now that it's back, that one was just constantly playing in the background. All the podcasts, oil and gas startups, like that was my main hub for learning. And then as I got further and further into the industry, people would, obviously I went into business development, I'm getting into sales, and people are like, so explain to me how you would create a campaign around XYZ product. And I'm like,
yeah, what?
Pardon? I don't understand any of those words. I don't think any of that was English. And so obviously, because there was this quote unquote language gap, I wanted to close that barrier and close that gap, and started taking a few courses. So maybe about 1.5 years ago, I took courses on like introduction to oil and gas, just to better understand it. Posted a really simple like picture of my thumb in front of the certificate when it was done. And I think that's still my best performing post to this day. And I was super honest.
Make sense.
Exactly. I was like, I wanted to make more sense, and people were very excited to know that I'm making the effort to learn. And so I wanted to take it one step further and go into petroleum engineering with AI applications. And again, I've only just recently started this course, so I have my notes in front of me, like everything that I've been learning from like oil and gas field life cycle all the way down to like offshore analytics, like seismic analytics and whatnot. And I figured I may as well just continue to do my due diligence to the industry, continue to learn, not only to help us like to develop business better and to sell better, but also to understand the industry and the way that it's changing. Like, and to your point earlier, John, like AI is changing everything constantly, and what we're learning right now will not be the same as it is in the next 6 months. But at the very least, we can start with the basics and the understandings of it, which is why I have about all of the big questions, the small questions, the dumb questions. But again, I'm happy to be the one to ask these. So at the very least, it's just like surge of knowledge that we can pass off to everyone.
I think the big thing there too, though, is like, and I think people from the outside don't think of it, but like oil and gas is a super actually inclusive community. And as long as you are making the effort to,
Yes.
learn and be part of it, like you said, for Montreal, very almost anti oil and gas culture, right? And then did you say before, were you a theater major?
I graduated in cinema and communications in college, and then I didn't go to university. I just went straight into sales from there as a manager. After that, I was helping out, building out this company that was doing door-to-door sales. And then obviously to better understand what it is that I'm selling for and recruiting for, I went on the field. And so I started doing door-to-door sales. So I'm almost implementing that. So though I'm not necessarily running this company, I am part of an integral department, business development. And the only way for me to learn is to be in everyone else's shoes without physically being able to go off onto like rig sites and like get my hands dirty.
No, that's to Bobby's point. That's the industry appreciates effort, right? Like, and that's one of my favorite parts about it. You don't have to have a PhD to go work your way up into a, important role in the industry. People will help you if you show that you care and you're trying. Right?
Oh, 100%.
It's pretty amazing.
I mean, I was a high school math teacher and a coach, and had no
really.
I had no business getting a job. Thanks, John Hedges. At ConocoPhillips, but you get in and you dive in and you work hard and try to learn as much as you can, and people
absolutely
will lift you up.
I think the big thing too is I had a career at one point in time on the sales side as well, and it's very hard to sell something you don't understand. And so like I think that has bitten a lot of service, just companies in general, quite a bit, where it's like, they hire a marketing department, or they have one internally, or they hire somebody, but they don't know anything about the industry. So that they're just trying to use kind of generic sales techniques that don't necessarily work if you don't know what you're selling. And so your approach here, I think, is spot on. As with most things, you can learn as much as you want from a book, but until you go out and do it, you don't really know, and so I applaud your efforts on trying to do that and educate yourself, both, academically, but also by, the real world experience of it.
For those of you listening, she'll be ready to come in as a reservoir engineer in probably about 6 weeks. Yeah.
Give me 5.5 just to wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
And then half a week just to like fully prepare myself.
Okay, cool.
Like I want to get myself the full hard hat. Actually, I have a hard hat at home.
Nice shiny white one.
Not shiny.
Good. That's better that way.
Even better. It has a single sticker on there. By the end of my journey, I will have not a single patch of white left on there.
Perfect.
Just gonna stick them all on there, but I'll be ready.
Every safety person's nightmare.
Sorry, guys.
Stickers used to be such an integral part of the field, and now it's like frowned upon because it could be potentially hiding a crack in the hard hat. And so it's like,
the more you learn.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll keep it white.
But stickers are still like oil field bartering currency for sure. So they're very valuable in the field side of things.
I love that. That's perfect.
All right, kick us off. Let's get into
You guys ready to be drilled?
Let's do it.
All right, let's start off.
Driller, barely know her, right? Is that
That's coming to a t-shirt.
To a t-shirt near you.
Near you soon.
I still have to talk to my team about that. I guess by the time this comes out, they'll already be aware and the t-shirt will be in production, but I hope y'all are ready.
Now available on the Midnight Marketing website.
Come get your merch. All right, guys, so let's drill you real quick. Let's start as dumb as we possibly can. What do AI, ML, and LLM stand for?
I'm just glad you didn't ask what GPTs stand for. Thanks, Jacob. Which I'll never forget, by the way. So what you want to take?
Yeah, I mean, AI is artificial intelligence. ML is machine learning, and then LLMs is large language models. So, I think the lines get blurred really quickly as to what people are calling. I mean, AI has been a concept for 60, 70,
40s, 50s.
Like basically science fiction. Right. Robots can do things and talk and whatever. In our first guest ever, Talal was talking about how he was working on an AI computer vision thing at U of H
in the 90s.
Oh, shit.
I think it's one of those things like we've known what we want to do, but we haven't had the compute power and capacity. And now we have the entire internet, and somehow we can consume that all into massive supercomputers and do all this cool shit. So
yeah, over the last year, I've come to this realization that it's just a convergence of technology, right? So it's like you can't have a machine learning model unless you have a bunch of data to train the model on. And so then it's and you need a lot of compute to train the model on the flip side of it. And so over time, we've been getting more and more data, and finally we're getting better and better data. And then on the other side, you've got the convergence of cheaper and cheaper hardware,
Storage,
better
yeah.
hardware, way more storage. And so it's like, okay, well, now we're at the point where we have so much data that humans literally can't comprehend it. And so how do we fix that? Well, we train a computer to do it. And that's kind of the gist of a lot of this stuff is just, it's like an evolutionary process in a sense, at least on the technology side of like, okay, well, we initially had a bunch of numerical data that we couldn't make sense of. And now we built machine learning models to help do that. And now we have a bunch of written data that we can't make sense of. And that's where language models kind of come in. But a lot of them have like intertwined pieces or components that one uses and another doesn't, and all of these things. So it's weird because a lot of people use them very interchangeably, but they do
stand for a while. It was data science and machine learning.
Right.
There's a big
big data.
And big data. But like, I mean, I think where I would maybe draw the line is like machine learning. You've got more of your clustering algorithms. You've got regression, and some of these like even random forests, like tree type models, and those things are just constantly iterating and learning, as you add more and more data, and then you can kind of redo the model and then push it out and like do those kind of things. But now like AI, I think what people are more ubiquitously, LLMs are kind of more what people are talking about there. But that's where it's been. You can speak more to what's going on there relative to the.
Yeah, there's a lot going on the AI side or the language model side. As everyone's aware, there's basically a new model, it seems like every week, and they all keep adding new things. And but yeah, it's like I said, it's this evolutionary thing of like, okay, well, within a single oil and gas company, there's probably millions of documents, right? And so it's like, how the hell are you supposed to find the information that you need when you have that volume of data?
You need to find this clause.
Right. Well, yeah. And and that's the part of the problem is it's like, I know this document exists. I know it's in this contract. I don't know where the hell the contract is. Or there's 20 versions of the contract, which is the one that I'm supposed to be using. And so like the amount of time, I've heard everything as far as 30% on the low end up to 70% on the high end of engineers' time in the energy business is spent looking for data. And so it's like you're paying people very large salaries.
It's like to scrape all of this information.
And half of their time is just looking.
They just need the information to now actually do their job.
Right. They're not doing their job. They're looking for the data so that they could do their job. And so the promise of this is to allow people to do their jobs way more efficiently, way more effectively. And like the long-term goal in my mind of language models, at least from an enterprise corporate perspective, especially within the energy business, is historically as oil prices rise and activity increases, you need more physical bodies. You need more people, whether that's in the field or in the back office or in engineering, whatever. The promise with language models is this: ideally, it will allow people to scale their company without having to scale the amount of people as quickly. Right. So you as the engineer are empowered to do more because you're not spending half of your time looking for stuff. You have the stuff literally at the click of a button, and then you can go do your job. And so that's kind of a very simple way of putting it. But yeah, it's a lot. I also think the really interesting part with language models is it kind of allows this convergence of data from all different sources. There's a bunch of things that like MCPs that allow you to pull data from a bunch of different places that might not be in your internal data set, like an API, but without having to go and, dump all of that into a database and structure it and understand all of that. You can just set up an MCP server and it will do it for you essentially. And so now you can have, okay, well, I've got my internal data set, but then I can contextualize it further with public data that I pull in from, like I was showing you earlier. And so now you have this marriage of, historically speaking, engineers typically either have the raw data or they have the report. They don't have both. And that's because raw data typically lives in a database and the reports live in a PDF, which is, we can go into how terrible of a format that that is. But the promise of language models, in my experience that I've seen, is just, it's really being able to unify all of that into one place. So you don't have to go, it's like the multiple tabs problem. You're not tab switching. You're not going to different, I've got to get the data from this app and then I've got to go pull it from this database over here. And then I've got to find the PDFs in another system that correlate to those. It's a nightmare.
I think one more point on this question, and I know we've got a lot to get to, but is I would say what all LLMs are AI, but AI isn't necessarily LLMs
Yes.
too. Like, I mean, there's a whole nother side of this.
Yeah. Yes.
Good Jesus.
Makes it fun.
It's much deeper than we think it
Well,
actually
yeah, people
is.
just, I think LLMs have done such a great job that people think this is the only type of AI.
Yes.
But like, there's, when I go, now we have multimodal models. Like, so now you get computer vision and all that stuff too. But
Yeah, you have computer vision, you have text to speech or speech to text, you have all kinds of different flavors of it, so to speak. And again,
and as you
it's
get the
all
robotics
tools.
and everything about the Boston robotics and all that kind of stuff, it's just,
Yeah. Now, like I said,
those are not all powered by LLMs, right?
Correct.
But it is AI in the sense of,
Yeah, but it's just like marketing, right? Like
Right.
at the surface, people are like, "Oh, marketing," right? Like you do social media, and it's
Oh,
like,
good God, no.
you make posts every day.
Oh, good God, no.
There is so much more to marketing. Or development, right? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
you write code. It's like, okay, well, there's a
It's
difference
so
in
much
writing
more of a
code
science.
than
Yeah.
productionizing code, managing servers, UI, front end. Like, there's a lot more to it than just that.
And actually interfacing with people and turning their idea into code.
Yes.
On the way that you have, obviously you have different platforms that you're using in the marketing world to kind of like dive down into into the science of it. What platforms would you suggest starting on if you're getting into real time experience? Because obviously once you've learned all of this, once you've learned about AI, ML, and then LLM, obviously you want to start implementing it before you can go into the whole before we get into the whole petroleum engineering part. What platforms would you propose like clicking around on and learning on before you can really implement it properly?
You have some from the. I mean, I'm going to go out and say that Python is probably the best starting place, just because it's
Everything
very
has
robust.
a Python API,
Yes.
basically.
And most of the ML and language model stuff is pretty much driven
Python
by
became
Python.
like R was a contender there for a while, and I love R. I'm sure you can still do a good bit of this I'm sure they have pipes and stuff to it, but yeah, I mean, Python, you have all the different data science models, machine learning, you got TensorFlow, I think you put in there, and those were all things leading up to the LLMs. Now OpenAI and Claude, all of them have an interface through Python.
pretty much all directly supported, at least through
But now
Python.
you get like really meta, because now you can write your code using Claude, maybe you don't know Python, but you can write Python using Claude and now have that access, probably OpenAI. Like there's all these things that you could do.
Are there any free versus paid models that you're using right now that you would prefer over others?
I would say from the free side, Gemini's pretty damn good. I mean, they all have free tiers, right? But
How good does it actually get?
yeah, I mean,
Some of it's how often you can use it too. I mean, I
Yes.
upgraded OpenAI
How often,
or
what you're using it
ChatGPT because I
for.
was using it and I ran up on the daily limit, and I'm like, well, I probably need
That
a
sucks.
better one anyways, and $20 a month or whatever it was. It's like,
and that's the thing.
I'm going to get the
right,
value out of it.
is it's like if you're using these on even a few times a week basis, $20 a month is literally nothing. But
I mean, think about like I know I've used it to help write some LinkedIn posts. I'm sure like even just for brainstorming and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
like this is iteration that you wouldn't be able to get maybe without another person, So again, now we start getting into how much it augments just.
no, for sure. And if you really want to do it for free, there's a library called Ollama that allows you to install open source models directly on your laptop. And that is, again, of course, very contingent on the specs of your laptop. But I mean, even like most MacBooks, I think are pretty good at running these, and they have quantized versions of them, which are just smaller, lighter weight ones that you can run on lighter horsepower hardware and stuff. But I would say those are probably the two easiest today. Open Router is another really interesting one. It's literally a router, so you can go in there and just pick whatever model you want. If you have API keys, you can post them in there, but they have a bunch of free tiers and stuff, and they host all kinds of open source models and free kind of preview models and stuff like that they let you use for free. So it's kind of cool because you put in one prompt and then however many models you picked, they all respond at the same time. So you can compare answers too.
Okay.
It's pretty neat.
But even like, I mean, we didn't bring up, say, Cursor. If you're going to look on
Yeah.
that side of it, I mean, like
No,
Cursor is a
that's-
free like development environment you can just download, and it was built off of VS Code.
That's what you were looking at.
Okay, yeah.
So, I
all
mean,
that code
again, now
there.
you have access to that. Now you can write your Python in there, but you can have it help you write your Python because you can do your prompting to the side,
Yeah.
and it basically builds everything for you. Like,
Yeah, on the coding side, I would say Cursor and Windsurf are the two big contenders right now. They're just integrated. They're IDEs with LLMs integrated into them, and so like I was showing you earlier, like it makes it so easy to iterate on a script or to have it write a script for you and
just implement it right away.
Yes.
I mean, for me, especially if I was a more private operator, I know the publics have a lot more some data security and privacy things that they have to adhere to, but like, why wouldn't I give my best kind of like code first kind of Petroleum engineers like cursor and say, go wild?
Yep.
Like,
well, and I mean, even their first paid tier includes private, like they're all private. And so it's, I saw a post the other day and it was like, if you give a junior dev cursor, it's going to create junior dev code. But if you give a senior dev cursor, it's going to create really, really good code. And so like I was telling you, it's like if you just understand the basics of Python and how to code and, you know, the logic and how to do loops, and if you need APIs to get the data, all of that stuff, you can get very, very far, especially with just like scripting, right? Like not productionized code, but like I need to go pull data from here and do this to it, right? Which is a lot of what a lot of people in our industry do or need to do. And so it's, I mean, it makes it so fast. Like,
so it looks like I'm taking out all of my notes from all of my coding classes in college then. It's another thing I want to learn. It's probably gonna be tough for me.
Well, but learning it by like I learned by doing, right?
Yeah.
Like, but one of the big things that I will say is people don't use language models enough for helping understand.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
like you can
explain this code to me,
right? Have it write the code for you, then take the code, dump it in your favorite language model, and say, explain what this code is doing to me step by step, and it will do a very good job of that in 99% of the cases. And so, like that's a really good way to learn it, right? Because for me, like I've always been in the data side of things. I've always wanted to learn Python, but I can't learn something unless I'm doing it, right? Like you teaching me about classes doesn't mean shit to me unless I go do something with that.
You're physically implementing it, right, and then seeing
and I need to know why I need to know the why.
Why am I using this exact code? What is it doing? And then what's the end result?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because even like I for one of my clients, I wrote a SQL query to pull some stuff down, and I sent them like the output of it. But I also sent them the code and was like, well, they're not going to understand the code. But I was like, plopped it into Claude and was like, all right, explain this to an accountant who's probably more Excel first. So he went through and it's like, well, this join is kind of like a VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP, you know, blah, blah. And like basically put it in their terms. And I was able to share that across so they kind of understood what it was doing at every step in their own way that their brain works and processes.
No,
so question on that actually, because I keep hearing people mention Claude, and this is probably one of the only platforms that I haven't heard of yet. What exactly is it, and how does it differ to ChatGPT at this point?
It's another foundational model.
Okay.
It's just different.
Different in what sense?
Company.
Okay.
Their methodologies for how they train it and what they're doing. It's a competing product to ChatGPT or Gemini.
It's, you know, at least to this point, it's between it and Gemini really for the best coding.
Yeah, so currently,
models.
I think that's the debate. Yeah, for sure. And that changes too, right?
Yeah.
Like,
the new Gemini came out.
6 months ago,
way
it
better,
wasn't that way. Now it is. And so it's, and then there's a bunch of open source coding specific models too that it's like, I haven't even tested those, but they could be better. Who the hell knows?
So for someone like myself that is just getting into petroleum engineering with AI applications, where would I start first? Would it be more like LLMs, time series models, something else? Where would you start?
I think like you're doing, start with the actual petroleum engineering.
Right.
Because there may be an answer that's already been fleshed out.
Yes. Well, and that's,
that doesn't even require AI. Like to our point, doesn't even require AI yet.
We were talking about how quick things change, but I think the thing that doesn't change is the foundation, right? Like if you don't understand what a wellbore is, or, you know, where the data is coming from, or why the data looks different, and it's like, oh, well, that data came from Halliburton and this data came from Schlumberger, so it's going to look different, even though it's the same shit. There's a lot of nuance to that across the industry, and so understanding like how things work and why things are the way they are before you get into it is, in my opinion, much better. Like you can kind of teach anyone to code. It's much harder to have the SME piece of the industry than it is to, you know, put it in. You don't even have to teach them code now. You just put in a language model.
I guess to that end though, if we're going to assume you have a base knowledge in petroleum engineering, or geology or whatever, I mean, again, I think you need to understand the fundamentals that lead up to that also. Like even just linear regression and
Basic stats.
Yeah, basic stats and stuff like that, because that's what's going on under the hood in these things. And I don't know, I can see both sides, because someone could actually not know any of those, jump right to an LLM, get a good answer, and like if they waited to learn those things to get to that answer, there's a balance. But if you really want to be an expert, I think you need to build that foundation.
So speaking of foundation, before you start layering on the machine learning, what are those principles and what does that look like?
Yeah, I would say it's basic data science stuff.
Yeah, data science, even like data modeling, because like you have to put the data in a format so that you can put it in there. And I mean, it's been the proverbial 80-20, like 80% of your time is spent, getting the data ready.
Mm-hmm.
And the actual data science and the modeling is not actually that difficult.
I mean, literally what we were walking through before we got in here, that is literally the 80% of what makes what we're doing at Collide different. It's not just dumping PDFs into a model. We're doing a lot more around all of the data side of what goes into the model. And then like the model piece, it's like the models, we just pick which model we're going to use and it's there. We don't have to do any maintenance or things on it.
So am I leaving in outliers, kicking them out? I mean, again, to that end, you're talking about like maybe time series type stuff. I mean, there's a ton of time series data. So I think having just understanding of just time series data in general. I mean, I think some of the time series models, but say in oil and gas, like a lot of these things that you'll pull off the shelf are more like seasonal models, and the oil and gas stuff rarely has a seasonal component, like at least on this more science side. I mean, I'm sure sales and stuff, there's seasonality that's baked in. But you already have, like, you should understand the ARPS equation, because you could probably use AI or some other model. Oh, look, I've forecasted oil, and it's not nearly as good as what people have been doing in ARPS for years.
I think the data foundation is really a good point here. Because with even if you're a front end developer, you're getting data from somewhere and you're displaying data. Like, data is the root of most things that you're going to be doing on,
especially now,
the AI side or anything. Right?
Well, even like say, I think it just dropped today, but we were talking to Jeff Krimmel a week or two ago. But like for him, it's like, all right, we've got 4 different sources of data, and this one calls revenue this, and this one calls it that. So if you don't even understand, like the AI is not going to understand that. It's not going to know how that context unless you give it that context.
Yeah, you have to clarify. It's like, okay, these synonyms they need to mean the same thing. We need to make sure that we are calling it the same. Otherwise, they just start popping up with different names. You're like, wait, so is this synonymous with no, yes, maybe?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're extracting perf tables from post-job reports at the moment, and Jimmy, one of our new devs, was like, wait a minute, so on this one, it's got the clusters broken out, but there's no shots per foot. There's just a little side table that says the number of shots per foot and the spacing and the phasing and stuff. And then in the Halliburton table, it's got every single detail written out and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, this is exactly the problem. Yeah. That's I think I know I've mentioned it a million times on the show, but like that's another thing coming in that a lot of people don't realize, is that the operators don't generate a lot of their own data until the well goes into production. And so because of that, all of the data that they're getting is from dozens of different vendors in different formats with different terminology, but it all ultimately means the same thing to the end user. But if you're doing stuff with that data, you as the SME have to understand that, wellhead pressure and treatment pressure are the same thing on, but they're calling them 2 different things because it's 2 different companies. And so there's the data foundation piece, I really do think will go a long way in helping a lot of this stuff. But even like with your background, like you don't even realize how much data stuff you're doing on the marketing side, because that's all, I mean, you've got the front end of marketing, which is, the events and the advertising and all of that and the posts and all of that stuff.
But then there's the back end of growth and analytics.
Right. It's like, why are you doing these things? It's because you want to get data so you can optimize for the best result, which is all data driven. And so it's like,
it's at the end it is all, I don't want to overcapitalize,
100%,
SEO, all those kind of things. Like,
I mean, I'm in the middle right now of kind of comparing the work that I'm doing on LinkedIn with the work that I'm attempting at doing with these courses right now. And it's like, I've been able to fine tune the content that I'm posting, knowing what days to post it, when to post it, what to post, who to target it to. We were actually talking about this over coffee very briefly, but like what to and what not to do when supposedly
platform.
coding, on LinkedIn, if you want it to perform, it's like you don't add links, you don't add emojis, and you don't copy paste from ChatGPT directly because LinkedIn knows. And what were you mentioning earlier?
Yeah, pro tip. Well, one, there was like a security thing that came out about ChatGPT, even on the private versions. When you click the copy button, that triggers an event on their backend that stores whatever you were copying, because they're using that to reinforce the model.
Yeah, oh, this was good because they wanted it.
Right. Like if you're copying it, that basically says that your intent is that this is good,
taking it somewhere else.
So you're taking it somewhere else to do something with it. Therefore, that was a good response. So send that back to the model to keep the model training. But the other thing that a lot of people don't know is within that text, there is like hidden Unicode characters that basically allow other platforms now to recognize whether this was human generated or not. And I know there's going to be a lot of work around that, because especially with the video stuff, like the image and video stuff now, it's kind of terrifying at the potential outcomes of that. But those are, it's there's even websites now that you can just paste the copy into and it will remove those texts, the hidden characters from it, and then you can go use it somewhere. But it's always going to be this back and forth of,
you can never, you'll never, at some point you'll never be able to tell if it is an originally written post or if it's all AI. And half the time people can figure out if it is AI because people will use M dashes. And I spoke about this the last time that I was here, and I was like urging people to stop using M dashes. They don't understand the concept of it, because sometimes you post it and it just looks like you got that whole copy, that whole text off of ChatGPT. And so now when I see M dashes in people's posts, I'm like,
oh yeah, no,
are you sure?
I make sure
emojis.
And I think it was either on Twitter or LinkedIn, but like I think Colin put something about that too. But I was legit starting to use them sparingly, like in work back even 5 years ago. And now it's like I won't touch it. Like
forget the M dash, just a regular dash. We're not about the M dash anymore.
Yeah,
well, exactly.
Or periods, actually. Imagine that. Like
each model.
Stop your sentence.
Full stop.
Get out of here with your grammar, Bobby. No, but each model also tends to use, like, there's a short list of different words that
the buzzwords
that pretty much always include in them too, which is another interesting kind of tell of these things. But
that already, that's a whole other topic. But LinkedIn buzzwords and ChatGPT buzzwords.
You can literally tell ChatGPT don't use M dashes in the response, like remove them all, and it still leaves them in. Like it can't help itself.
Yeah. Again, these things are not sentient yet, so they don't understand the reasoning and thinking part of them is not. They say that they do it. There was actually a paper or article that came out, I think this week or last week. Somebody went through and tested, like, they qualified the different layers of reasoning or whatever, but they were basically said outside of just like light reasoning, once it gets past a certain level, it just completely collapses on itself as far as the reasoning side of it goes. But that's important, right? Like if you don't understand the intent of what the user is asking and then how to go take that intent and break it down into steps of things it should do, then yeah, it doesn't. But that's the whole point, is these are models. And the idea is that the model was trained to do a certain thing. It doesn't think, it is instructed to think. No one really knows what that means, but they don't have comprehension is probably the easiest way to say that in my experience. At least
not yet is the
deep
keyword.
Comprehension. Yes.
Not yet is the key word. We're almost there.
Well, they say that, but that's, I don't know. I'm very on the fence about that because everyone is saying it's getting closer and closer. I tend to believe that it's probably not as close as they think it is. But
I think I'm curious on, do you think that we're getting the best version of models, or is there stuff going on behind the scenes, like with the CIA or like government
as
levels, as it should?
All things technology.
Yeah.
It is
Nothing
10
is
to 20.
safe.
I guarantee you language models derived from the fact that we are trying to process as a government on the federal side. We're trying to monitor people and we're trying to process millions and millions of records of emails, texts, like all the written shit that people have. And so, yeah, I guarantee you this has been operating in government agencies for probably a decade now.
And the digital footprint is so real and it is so scary.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
I mean, I fully know that I have so many videos out there where people can probably replicate my voice.
Oh yeah, that's.
But we're also getting to a point now where AI made videos, you can tell that it's been AI made. Like, I don't know why, but on TikTok the other day, I saw this like talking gorilla, absolutely hilarious. Don't know why, and it looks very real, but you can tell that it's not. So again, to your point, it's like they're not sentient yet.
Yeah, no,
but we're scarily
with the image
close.
video stuff. It's just like video games, right? Like me playing GoldenEye on Nintendo 64 now looks comical because of how terrible it looks. But whenever the 64 came out, that was mind blowing. Like we didn't have 3D, right? Everything was flat, and so it's the same thing though. Like now they're pretty damn good. They have these weird things that they do with like fingers and appendages that it just misses.
But even
a
those have
finger.
gotten a lot better.
And it just keeps getting better, right? And so like at some point it will be unrecognizable, which is terrifying.
Wow, okay.
Good.
Bobby's breaking all of our
breaking
studio equipment. But that's a whole other can of worms.
I mean, there was one a week or two, a month ago. It was like, I think it was all AI generated, but it was like within a conference. It looked like it was like a boat show or something like that, and people were talking.
Oh yeah. They're now doing really good videos of like fake interviews, like one-on-one interviews of people that like you guys do, where you like walk up with the mic. It's completely fake from a conference or whatever. It's like, well, this is terrifying.
Oh, phenomenal. I feel so much better about the future of my work now.
No, that just means you get to generate 100 different versions of that and throw it on social and then look at the stats and see which one did better. And
just hope for the best.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
I don't know. I think at some level, they're to your point, I think people they're not always gonna be able to, on a case-by-case basis, but like, I think original content and stuff like it will shine through and people will desire that more.
I completely agree
always.
with that.
Always. There's not a single time where, actually, no, that's a lie. I was going to say there's not a single time where I've posted content with ad spend behind it where it hasn't done well. Obviously, it's meant to perform better because you're forcing it in front of other people. But still, I'd say like the top 10 of what I post right now is, I'd say 7 of those pieces of content are all organic.
Yeah. No,
That's for another topic.
You're seeing it with, like, I think I saw a Mr. Beast ad for something he was doing with Lowe's this week. And I texted Colin. I was like, I'm calling top on Mr. Beast right now. Like, what is he doing advertising for Lowe's? But it's the same thing like that you saw with that, right? Like when Mr. Beast got really popular, all the social media went to like quick cuts and like now YouTube videos, like everybody started mimicking him. And so there was like a year or two where it seemed like everything was you didn't have 30 seconds go by without a cut, and then like the quick action type stuff. And then you notice that people start leaving the like tags up at the front. Like you're not going to want to miss this. Make sure you check out, stay to the end or like whatever and stuff. And like they're just copying that format, but
or their call to action has been pasted at the front.
Yeah.
And it's just something completely wild. It's like someone bungee jumping off of God knows what.
And then the craziest thumbnail and all this stuff. But
and then it
like,
cuts the beginning.
Yeah. And now more organic, like less produced or either highly well produced, not in that social media realm, or completely unproduced, just like pop your phone out, selfie style. Those seem to be doing better than
always. They always will.
Stuff. And it's because it's people at the end of the day, it's a human. You're targeting a human.
Mm-hmm.
Humans want to connect with other humans, not with companies or.
Which is why I feel like we're getting into a world now where topics as information heavy and as tech heavy as petroleum engineering is, it needs to almost be organic, because if you're just going at it like straight AI and just straight, all your questions are AI, all of the footage is AI, all of that, it's simply just not going to perform well at all. And second of all, it's incredibly tech heavy. If you're not speaking to the truth, like again, which is why we're doing this in person, rather than me just going out to ChatGPT and being like, "Hey, answer this for me," because I've given ChatGPT questions before, knowing what the answer is, and it just straight up gives me the wrong answers. I was telling someone at ERTech this week, I was comparing ChatGPT and Collide, and I'd asked, I don't remember what the question was, but I'd asked an oil and gas specific question to ChatGPT, knowing somewhat what the end answer would be, but not fully, like to its full extent. I knew that it gave me the wrong answer, so I shoved it into Collide, and Collide gave me a much more detailed answer. I was like, you know what? I'd much rather that. But then again, there are a whole bunch of questions I know that we still have to get to here that require organic answers. So to get into those organic answers, going outside of like learning Petroleum AI and like where to start, where to go, I want to talk about like the real applications and what's working. So yeah, I was just looking at that one too. I have like 5 in here that I want to hit all of them. So how is AI being used for due diligence?
Yeah, so this is one of the applications we've been approached with from a couple different folks, but there's this concept of data rooms in the energy business. So someone is trying to sell an asset, so they put together what they call a data room, which is their selection of files and documents about what they're selling that they're allowing people to come look at so that they can make offers on the property and stuff. But there's a lot of advantages that you can have if you can process that quickly. And generally speaking, each company has their specific way of kind of going through all of that data, right? So you're looking at everything from the land and title, the sales contracts as to how much you're getting paid and who's taking it away and how long and all of that stuff, to the actual operations, the reservoirs, the logs, all of that fun stuff. And so it's just very data heavy. And again, we as humans can only process so much data at once or at a time, and then even over time, humans become fatigued and you get worse at processing that data. And so being able to have a tool like a language model go through a big giant set of data, it's looking for very specific things based off what the operator is, their methodology for evaluating these workflows. And it's going through and basically just extracting and then allowing an aggregate view of, here's 1,000 documents. Here's a 5-page report on everything that's in that document that's custom tailored to exactly how you would evaluate a normal deal. And so there's additional things that you can do on top of that, as far as like, hey, if there's database data or production data, you can run that through economic models and, do all kinds of different forecasts and stuff like that. But that's one of the big, that's a very interesting application right now with a lot of the language models. So it's.
Yeah, because like with the data room's available for a certain amount of time, but if you can get that data in and process it quicker, maybe you can beat someone to the punch with a bid, and maybe the bid is what someone else wants, but you can get to a more confident answer faster. But I think on the other side of it too, all right, let's say you win the bid. Now you have to buy the company or whatever. Like, now you got to get their data in. And I was just talking to a company the other day out of Canada, actually, who they kind of do like data AI things for land and lease and all that kind of stuff. But like, they actually were able to help with an acquisition, and I think deal closed, and over the weekend they were able to get all the well files and stuff migrated over the weekend, which this used to be like a few weeks to a couple months.
You had to do that
process
at your prior company, right? That took months. Yeah. Cause I mean, it's true. There are so the amount of people we talk to that have, either data in servers or data in physical filing cabinets that they got through acquisition that they just literally don't know what all is in there is insane. But it's a very common thing in our industry, right? And so it's like, well, first, I can't deploy a language model into a filing cabinet, so we've got to fix that problem. But even then, it's like, okay, you can envision a world where it's like we point an agent at the folder of all that data, and it goes through and it categorizes stuff, it indexes it, it makes it all searchable and discoverable, and it gives you a big summary of
like splitting files out. Like, yeah, and you can set rules to split a file, because like, I mean, one of my clients was asking me like, hey, do you know any good tools I can do this? Because it was like, we've got our lease in here, but then there's a bunch of extra junk in this PDF that isn't actually part of the lease, but it could even be check stubs or just extra stuff that got rolled in, but we only want this. Like, and so like they, I think the platform I was talking about, I imagine y'all could probably even do it with the right rules or understanding. Like, you can actually split those into multiple files and route them. This one goes to this folder, this one goes here. And
yeah, that's, again, it all boils down to the data, right? Like, at the end of the day, the data.
Yeah, these would take serious man hours or woman hours, like.
Yeah.
The more you give it, the less time it takes to actually generate it. I mean, well, generally, what's because you were saying something could take a weekend, it could take a week, it could take months. What's the general life cycle of something like this? If you were to do this, I was going to say, if you're just going to raw dog it, probably cut that out. If if you were, how long would it take if you were to do this without AI?
Oh man,
in months or even years, or it never gets done. In some cases, it's just like we'll just slam it all here, and then if someone needs it, then
They'll
we'll dig
figure
through
it
it.
out.
We'll figure it out then. I think even at GME, Michelle, who's on my team, did a couple, like almost 1 or 2 iterations of reorganizing the files, like because we did an acquisition or 2 or divested, and like I was like, well, now's a good time to do it. But she wrote Python scripts that were pulling data from this folder and moving it over and categorizing. No, we want to categorize by cost center. No, we want to do by, DSU, or like there's different ways of thinking about it. But
yeah, well, and that's the thing, like the real answer to that is obviously it depends. But the big thing with it is there's so much nuance, right? Like to that your point, right? GME might group their documents one way, and then Devin wanted to group them a different way, and so it's like the data is all there, it's all the same, but now I've got to reorganize how that works, and I want to do that in some kind of automated fashion. And normally that's by hand or writing scripts, very specific scripts that do very specific things over time, and then that's not even thinking about the whole architecture of what you were using to what you're now going to use at the new company, and like the different tools and the platforms and all that shit. And so, yeah, it can absolutely, there's very justifiable reasons it can take months to years to do that.
But I think with this, because you're indexing it in certain ways, like you don't even have to necessarily think about, do I want this folder structure or that folder structure, right? Like, because it is more searchable and things are related in certain ways, that now you just have this layer on top that can go find this in the way that you're thinking about it.
Yeah, I saw a tool on LangChain actually yesterday that is explicitly for file management, right? And so it's like I can deploy it, I can literally use it on my system files wherever that system may be, and it can just tell me what it knows the mapping of the entire file structure. So it's wild. But
So then, silly question: how efficient is too efficient? If we start getting to the point where everyone is using AI to put all of their ideas together, to quantify everything, and to just make everything much quicker in the world of oil and gas, if we're too quick, do you feel like that would be detrimental, or do you feel like if we're not, that's probably not the best way to put it. Let's just stick to how efficient is too efficient and how detrimental is too efficient.
I think if it's efficient and trustable, then I don't think there's a problem with it. But I think if it's, that was fast, but then people don't really trust that it actually got done the right way.
So you have to go back over it anyway.
Trust but verify anyways.
No, well, and that's exactly what I was going to say, right? Like in the short term, AI is not replacing a lot of people. It's magnifying what existing people can do. It's giving them time back. Instead of spending 50% of their time looking for the document, they find the document, and then now they're just outputting more. Over I don't know how many years. Yeah, then you start automating, you have agents that can start doing things automatically. But even then, it's the lowest, typically in my experience with technology, the things that you automate first are the boring, monotonous things that humans aren't good at anyway, right? It's like, okay, well, you're taking data from this invoice and you're hand coding it into an accounting system. No one likes to do that. Humans shouldn't be doing that. They're not, like, you get tired, you get lazy, you fat finger something. There's no reason. If you know what the mapping is and you can extract the data, like, why isn't AI doing that for you, right? And so there's so many of those like low hanging fruit, just like terrible monotonous things that across every department that people have to do, that I'm not like, that's where that's where this starts, right? And so it's like,
I think some of this is also, I was thinking about it before we came on, but like distance from the wellhead.
yes,
Like, I mean, the first thing that a lot of people were doing with LLMs was their open enrollment. It's like, oh, look, we're using AI. And that is a great use case, and it's low is high impact but low, risk kind of thing. But I mean, it's going to take a long time before we get to things running AI closer to the wellhead where it really drives way too much efficiency and pulls humans off the site. I mean, like, hopefully it does in some ways because it's safer.
It has over the years too, right? Like when I first started fracking in 2010, I think our crew had 20 to 30 guys on it, right? Like, I don't think there are any crews, full, 12-hour crews that have remotely that close to that many people now, right? And so, yeah, still very torn on, because it's like, there's always going to have to be people at the site. Like, I don't foresee us getting.
But if you met some of the
completely
guys that were
away.
out there, you might.
Well, and that's the dichotomy of it, though, right? Like, is it's like, shit, an AI is going to be a lot less, prone to going out and drinking too much and coming in late than, if a guy in the field. But, the guy in the field can turn a wrench and he can physically interact, because like at the end of it, it all boils down to risk. And if you having someone out there is risky on one hand because it's a person out there, but it's less risky from an operations perspective because at least if something goes wrong, they can stop it. Right. And so, yeah, it's a weird thing, but I agree with Bobby that it's going to start with the office and then move its way towards the field, generally speaking.
Okay. Oh, this one was specifically for, I guess, the AI portion. But someone wanted to know if you guys have any AI use cases that were deployed to production. Like, what was it? How long did it take?
You want to do a traditional one? I've got an LLM one we can hit on, but
Give me your case studies.
I mean, I think something that was, we use Azure, they call it document intelligence now, or whatever they call it, but and it was more computer vision, I guess, at that, but it was just like taking like
OCR,
OCR type stuff, but taking the, we had received payout statements from Equinor that we had, then we needed to kind of create a database of that. So we were able to run that over all the payout statements and pull out all the pertinent information because we didn't have that stored in our land system or anything like that. So we were able to pull that all out, which would have taken a lot of time and ended up taking like a day once we got it all set up and pulled that out. But I mean, I wouldn't say that's huge AI necessarily, but like, yeah.
I mean, it made it a lot more efficient. That's the thing. Like, there's so much of our industry data goes to die in a PDF, and it's like PDF is the worst possible format for a lot of it, but that's what everyone uses. And so you've got to have tools and they've gotten so much better these days.
If you've ever tried to use Tabula and like some of these things, and then you get like a printed PDF and stuff, like, I mean, like that is miserable. So
a printed PDF, a document that was originally digital gets printed so it could be signed, then scanned back in. This is how literally pretty much all field invoicing works, and then sent via email. And so it's a scanned version of a PDF, which is the absolute worst type of file that you can try and deal with. And
that sounds like that's so much more work than it needs to be, though.
It is.
I can buy a home using DocuSign.
Yeah.
But I can't get a $3,000 field invoice signed without going
stamp.
through that.
God forbid.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Then the super secure stamp. Don't even get me going on that. But on the language model side, we just actually deployed one of our first big kind of workflows around regulatory filings. So Texas Railroad Commission has a bunch of, if you operate oil and gas wells in the state of Texas, you have, in pretty much every state, you have all kinds of different regulatory permits and biannual things that you've got to submit to them about a bunch of different stuff. And so, but a lot of that, again, that workflow starts with them sending the operator a PDF of a scanned document that has a bunch of wells in it that they need to go get the data from and submit back to them. Well, it's in a scanned PDF. So the typical workflow is someone takes that PDF and types out every single well that is in that PDF, and then they have to go find those. Well, they use a VLOOKUP in an Excel workbook to go find those. And then if they can't find the matches because it's not using any kind of unique identifier, just the lease name and the lease number, you have to then go back in and find all the rest of the information. Yes. And so we've built a workflow that does it in less than a minute. So it's pretty awesome. Shameless plug,
shameless plug, as you should.
Hey, we're excited about it.
I feel like you guys need a little theme song every time you just shamelessly plug.
I know. I'll get Jacob to program some of those buttons on the board that we can start using.
A little.
That's a good idea.
Soundboard.
Collide.
Collide.
Has to be in the deepest voice possible. Okay. Real quick cut. Are there any questions from the outside of like the real applications portion that you want to cover? Or do you want to just move on to tech stack? Because I feel like we also somewhat touched on tech stack.
We touched a bit on this stuff. We can go into tech stack.
Okay, sick. So outside of the real applications, what's working, the use cases and whatnot, let's talk about tech stack and the tools. Because I know that tech now is constantly evolving, just like the same way that we've just been talking about everyone and their mother has a different version of ChatGPT that is doing something, but obviously ChatGPT is not always the most reliable. So when it comes to the platforms and tools, what is best for building LLM, can't speak, LLM applications in oil and gas?
Yeah, so we mentioned Cursor and Windsurf. Those are coding tools to help you code. There's a ton of Python libraries out there. You mentioned LangChain on here. LangChain is a really good, very popular, very well supported LLM framework that lets you have a lot of flexibility and has a lot of tooling and stuff that makes things just a lot easier. There's Haystack's another one that kind of lives in that realm. Pydantic is another one for Python specific LLM frameworks. But yeah, I would say, and then the model of your choice, right? Like, it's interesting because certain models, as we've kind of already talked about, are better at certain things than others, right? So like Gemini, in my experience, tends to be better at like this OCR kind of extracting data than Claude is. I don't know why, but it is. But the flip side of that is like Claude and Gemini tend to be better at coding than GPT does. And so it's like, but you don't learn that. Like, that's purely anecdotal from me, right? Like, that's just me using these tools. I could be completely wrong if based off of a benchmark, but that's a whole nother can of worms. Like, every time a model comes out, they run it against these benchmarks, and a human being doesn't have any fucking clue what that means. And so it's like, well, it beat it in these benchmarks, and they want to use that for the publicity side of it. But that just because it's better in one benchmark category, that just doesn't mean it's a better coding assistant than another one or whatever.
I mean, speaking of benchmarks, then you bring up like Snowflake and Databricks, and like they've got these things built into their platforms, and like they're becoming, like, Snowflake calls itself the data cloud, right? And but I mean, a lot of companies, even especially in oil and gas, are using Snowflake or Databricks or both in some cases, where they've got all of their company data, especially the structured data there, and now you can use Snowflake as Cortex, and I know Databricks has their own LLM models within it, and you're able to do stuff within like one holistic environment rather than having like kind of piecemeal together with some random Python script. You can do it within their platforms. And now we're getting to like, say within the database side, like you've got these semantic layers now, which basically are creating context of how this table and this table are related to each other. And now that's actually allowing the text to SQL or being able to just literally ask questions of your data rather than needing to have your database guy go run a query for you. You can literally ask questions of the data, like how much oil did we pump on this well or within this DSU, in the last 3 months, and it has the context enough now to go actually write the queries behind the scenes from that information.
Yeah, no, we've been playing with that quite a bit the last few months, and it's exactly for that, right? Instead of our growth and marketing team coming to me and asking me for a specific SQL query or them trying to do it in ChatGPT themselves, we've got a tool that I've connected to the Collide database, and they can query it and ask all kinds of questions about it, and it has been working very well. But I think that kind of goes back to the point of like, these tools they democratize the data, right? So like, whether you just need to find it faster or you need access to data that you wouldn't have previously been able to get to because it was behind a SQL query, you now have the ability to do those things. And so because people have more access to more data, theoretically at least, they should be able to make better decisions, make them faster, make them more efficient. So.
Well, another silly question then, what if you don't have access to any of the data and you're still starting off and you still want to get into it and understand which platforms are best to be using?
Yeah, so I know Bobby's said this before, but it's just start trying to use it for whatever whatever you're trying to do on your daily basis, right? Like,
so there's not one specific application that you would use if you have no data at all.
Well, man, at some level you've got
to have some data at some point,
some data or context to give it. But
like, I got into the data side because of this fantasy football league I've been in for the last 15 years with my buddies from home, right? And it's like, oh, if I can use data to be better at that
and like forecast
and win my league.
Have you?
2 times back to back. Anyway, I mean, then I started realizing like, oh, there's a lot of really interesting things that I can do with this. And then that just waterfalled into the rest of it. But I wouldn't have done that had I not had the need of like, I want to win my fantasy football league. So like, there's my problem statement. All right, how do I win my fantasy football league?
I think any technology you want to learn, you have to figure out what's holding you back. Like, I mean, let's say a lot of people, well, I know Excel, so I'm just going to do this in Excel. And sometimes you have to do that just to get the job done because you need an answer by 4 p.m. But if it's like, I would usually do this in Excel, but now I want to try it in Python. Like now, like force yourself to use Python to solve that problem, or now force yourself to try to use ChatGPT, or just, I mean, like even with all this, like there's so many ways that I even see people post, oh, I use GPT or Claude or what, Gemini in this way. I'm like, damn, I never even thought about that. You know, and now that it has all the context of your previous conversations, and you can literally ask it questions about yourself if you want the answer. But like, where are my blind spots?
Be careful if you want that answer. The FBI one is another really good one to really get creeped out on.
What's that?
It was like someone wrote this big prompt about like act as an FBI profiler and analyze the psychology of this person and analyze the threat level, like all this shit. It was a lot. But
that's what girls do for free when one of their friends say, "Oh, I'm dating this new person." It's like, who? Give me their first name. That's all I need. In 30 seconds, you have their Instagram, you have their LinkedIn, you know where the mom lives. Creepy, but I mean I think that's where we're getting to now.
Yeah. No. Again, data is becoming democratized by the day. More people have way more access to it.
Yeah, but I guess to your point though, if you want it with oil and gas and say you may not have access to like company specific data, but you've got folks like John Farrell and Well Database that have a free tier. You can go pull down some data out of Well Database and then try to solve a problem with it. Or,
that's a really good one that we should throw out there for sure. If you need access, if you just need sample data sets, or want to see what that data looks like, or anything like that,
like something to test out on your own without having to go and buy all of this information.
Statoil, Equinor, they posted a bunch of like the Volve.
Yeah, there's some open source stuff now
Volve
too.
Or Evolve, like,
I don't remember the name.
I think it was Volve, like database, right? But like they post, they've been actually very good historically about kind of open sourcing their data.
OSDU has some data sets too.
Sounds right. Yeah.
I think. And so, there's data sets out there. I mean, I recently had to scrape a bunch of Ohio data. The Ohio public data is pretty good.
Okay.
Generally speaking, it's way easier to navigate than the Texas data. But again, another nuance of the industry, right? Like every single state has their own regulatory commission with their own regulatory filings, with their own formatting and all of their own stuff.
And then it becomes that whole thing of like, well, Texas calls it this, or they call it, and then, again, we've talked about it numerous times, but Texas reports oil production on a lease basis. So they can take all 4 wells maybe, or 5 wells, whatever it is, and smash them together and say, this is how much oil produced. So now you have to actually like allocate that back to the wells. Whereas like then Ohio, or I know North Dakota or Colorado, they're by well. So like you have to know the nuances between the states. You could go grab the data from Texas, New Mexico, and Colorado, throw it all together, and then like it would look totally friggin' wrong if you didn't know what you were talking about, because you wouldn't know that, oh, actually all of the wells.
Yeah, why are all the Texas wells produced so much better than everywhere else? It's like, oh, there's 6 wells on that lease. But to Bobby's point, I think I don't know how long ago this was, a year or 2 ago, I made myself for a week try and solve all my problems using ChatGPT, and that immediately hooked me to it, because I tried to do things in it that I would have never thought to try and use it for. And then it did some of those things way better than I ever thought that it would do. And so I was like, oh, well, let me keep going. Like, you just keep going down the rabbit hole. So
of course, if you can't beat him, join him.
Yeah. And so, but like the easiest way to do that truly is you got to shift your mindset of like, instead of doing this in Excel, I'm going to go do this in Python. Or if instead of doing it over here, I'm going to ask ChatGPT to do it. If I need an idea for how to go about doing this, ask ChatGPT and see what it says. It'll spawn like it's really good for ideation or back and forth, especially on a specific topic that you may not know someone that's an expert in to refer to. So
last set of questions. I have about 3 of them for you. This one is purely opinion based.
You got to pick one.
Okay. What do you think is holding back wider AI adoption within oil and gas? Like, why are people not super quick to just jump on it and either take on a third party that would, like Clyde, that'd be able to help them out with their well information and just like general knowledge?
So, okay. So the first piece of this is risk. Every oil and gas company, the first thing they think of when they're evaluating any kind of decision is risk, right? And so the risk of AI, especially in the operations side of things, is it recommends that the driller do something, and then the driller does it and they blow out the well and there's a catastrophic failure and people die. And so it's like, it took me a very long time being on the tech side. I got very jaded for a while about how slow we were with technology. And then I had someone break it down for me like that. And I was like, okay, this makes a lot more sense, right? Like Facebook's risk of your picture not rendering properly on Facebook. What is the actual risk to Facebook of that? Pretty much nothing. So Facebook has dozens of different versions of the app running at all different times all over the world. And they can do that because the risk piece of it is not very high for them. If you apply that to the oil field, the risk is astronomical, right? Like loss of human life, environmental catastrophe
Financial.
type things. Yeah, literally ruining companies and people. And so they're way more hesitant. They're always we're at the forefront of technology when we're looking at it, but it just takes us longer to adopt it because we want to be very responsible with how we integrate it and adopt it and make sure that we're not setting people up to get injured, hurt, make bad decisions, et cetera, and stuff. And so I think that's one of the big ones.
Yeah. I mean, I think that just probably after that, it's skepticism. I mean, like they've seen hype cycles come through, and I mean, data science and ML, we're going to revolutionize this, or companies come in from Silicon Valley thinking they can solve all the problems and they don't even get close. So it's like, all right. I mean, I think most people, it's that whole crossing the chasm thing, right? They're going to have to, a lot of them are going to be laggards, even if not,
Yeah, I mean, the whole industry is, and this isn't unique to the oil field.
Fast followers.
Per Crossing the Chasm, great book. It tends to be fast followers or laggards, right? Like they want someone else to de-risk it for them. And then once that person does it, then everyone will go, and you see it all the time, right? Like it's kind of ridiculous, but it also makes sense when you think about it holistically and stuff. And so I agree with Bobby, the explainability piece. Also, tech is very good at over-promising and under-delivering in the short term, but in the long term, it does end up delivering what they say they do, generally speaking. And so you go through these hype cycles of technology. And I think because we had just been through the whole big data, data analytics cycle, which started off as all these promises of optimizing everything. And then every oil and gas company got into their data and realized all their data was shit and they couldn't run machine learning on it because they hadn't been preparing it properly or it wasn't structured properly, whatever. Well, now we've finally got to that point. They've been focusing on the data and getting it to that place. And so now that you have good data, implementing things like machine learning or large language models actually makes it much easier to do because you're not spending a year going through and setting up all of that data and making sure it's clean and structured and all of that stuff. And so I will say I've been shocked at how open the industry has been to adopting things like Collide over the last year. But I think there's another element there is just the age element, right? Like the average age in the oil field is getting younger by the day because of the whole great crew change thing. And the younger generation expects, we're digital natives, right? Like we expect things to be digital. We want things to be automated, and all of those things. And so that has also helped quite a bit, but it's also very hard to sell a black box solution to a bunch of engineers who just want to know the why and the how.
Yeah, why did it pick this?
Right. It's like, if you can't explain that, then it's not going to be worth it. It's not going to get traction. And so like, that's one of the explicit reasons why on Collide, we cite all of the sources of the data. Like that's because I built it for myself. I'm an engineer and I know that if you give me an answer and you don't give me a citation of where that came from, where I can at least go look at it and see like, oh yeah, that was right. Trust but verify, right? It's not going to work very well. And so
but I think what's maybe a little different for LLMs, or at least too, is like people have had access to it to go use it in their day-to-day lives. Whereas like I think data science, machine learning, we're like, oh, these nerds in the corner know Python and R and, go figure this out and give me an answer. Whereas it wasn't nearly as accessible, where like now the CEO of a company can go to ChatGPT or any of these things and start doing these things themselves.
They can see the value. They can realize the value much quicker and easier, right? Yeah. No, that's very true, right? The explainability of like, oh, we're going to build this predictive failure software. It's like, well, how is that going to save me money?
Yeah.
Well, is any of that part overhyped?
Which part?
Like, is there anyone that's like overhyping an AI system that's just not doing what it's supposed to.
Oh, I'm sure they're.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the problem is too when a lot of people are leading with AI. Like, there's a lot of people that just put up, like,
they
because
tune
it seemed
out.
like
They
snake
immediately tune
oil.
out.
You know, like, oh, you're just jumping on the train trying to sell me something. Because there were people doing that within 3 months of ChatGPT
you
coming
see
out.
that,
Then all of a sudden, use this new AI solution. Like, come
Hold
man.
on.
Like, there's no way you came. Yeah, we're ready for this.
Or
that
it's
fast.
like their AI solution is we added our support docs to a RAG model, and now we have AI driven support, and it's like that's not the feature I wanted in my decline curve analysis. Like that's not what I wanted at all. But yeah, there's the problem that I see with it is that the tech industry has gotten so good at making things seem so simple that it trains the user to think, oh, well, if they can, like, if they're showing it is that easy, then I can do that, right? Like I can go build my own RAG.
That's what they all
It's like,
say.
yes, you can using one of these platforms off the shelf, but it's not going to be that good once you get to a certain point. Like it all comes back to scaling and having true production kind of level software and stuff. But yeah, it's a conundrum because they make like their marketing and the way that they do stuff makes these things seem much easier. And generally speaking, they are. But if you want to do something for a company, like at a company scale, it's not nearly as simple as just dumping some things in a
Oh, I can
ChatGPT.
imagine not.
Yeah.
Well, it took you guys how long to build out Collide? 5 years?
No, we haven't been working on Collide for 5 years. Probably 2.
Okay. Oh, then there we go. This is in it. Well, I mean, it sounds like when I say only 2 years, it sounds like that's quite quick. But from the day that you came up with the concept and you put it into motion and you got all of this together, while everyone and their mother is also coming out with their own, or like trying to come out with their own AI platform of sorts, it's like you really see how much time and effort it takes into building this out. And you can't just feed information and hope for the best.
I think even like, I mean, y'all have gone through multiple iterations. I mean, you were
Oh,
doing models of models and all these things. And like,
100%.
I mean, like what it is today, you may have even basically scrapped what you were doing and started. So it's like,
well, that's the crazy part, right? Like it's the Wild West because new shit comes out every day. There's new models, there's new methodologies. People are trying and experimenting and doing all these cool things, which is awesome, right? Like I love progress. I love people being creative and trying to solve these unique problems in different ways. But because of that, you as the user have to figure out like, hey, okay, here is what we're trying to do. And everything else outside of that is kind of noise to an extent. And like, yes, there might be some new shiny things, but you don't have to be the first one to implement a technology. You just have to be the one that does it the best. Right. And so like, we don't have to keep pace with ChatGPT. We just need to make sure that our clients are getting the value out of what our product that they expect. And so as technology evolves, and that's the cool part about being in tech in the oil and gas business is you don't have to be the first ones, but if you can connect those dots and see, okay, GPT's had this web search for however long, 6 months. It's like, okay, well, we've got web search added to Collide as a backlog item. And it's like every day that goes by, that actually becomes easier for us to do because more and more people are building it, they're integrating it. And so you don't necessarily want to be the first because you can let other people learn. You can learn from other people. But
I mean, those are really all the questions that I have. I'm still processing half of it, by the way.
Yeah, those are a lot.
If you see me go blank for 30 seconds, I promise it's just the processing. And if you listen close enough, you'll hear the
Loading
the gears.
Absolutely. I mean, and I'm going to be able to watch this back and just learn anything that I maybe didn't quite understand first time around, which I'm sure is the majority of people who are going to be watching this. It's like, this will probably be one of those videos where you will need to continue watching in order to understand the fine-tuned version of it and then to apply it in real time. I'm excited to kind of revisit this in a little while when I've finished my course.
That'll be interesting, yeah.
Because this for me has really been like sitting down with the two very cool university professors who just like let me spew questions at them back and forth until I finally understand this. But being given a broader example of what I'm going to be looking forward to when I do start implementing this will probably just make the learning portion better. Because just looking at my notes, I've expanded on them quite a lot, so it's gonna look very scary right now. But it's like I have all of this, And this is from part of module 1.
Yeah, you got to.
Oh, we're still going. I'm not done yet. Hang on. Like, and I still have all of my really silly questions down there that I'm not going to show because I'm quite embarrassed of those ones. That one's for a separate message when we're not. I mean, for a separate call when we're not, where I'm not being filmed. But yeah, I'd love to revisit this with you guys, and you may or may not need to test me, just not now. Please test me when I'm back in town.
I was gonna say we'll come back with a test next time. That'll be fun.
Absolutely, come back with a test, or just come see me in Montreal and you can grill me there.
There you go. Saga Wisdom's
I'm down to go up there. Shout out to the Saga guys. I'm gonna try and get Colin to let us to go up there for that. But Bella, thanks so much. This has been so fun. I hope everybody hopefully learned something today through your.
And where can people find her?
Yeah, where do people find you?
Oh gosh, where can you find me? No, you can find me on
Every
LinkedIn.
trade show floor and
every single oil and gas trade show that has ever existed. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on the Instagram. You can find me yapping away. If you open up your ears, you'll just hear me going at it from another room. Or if you happen to be in Montreal, you can stop by the Midnight office and I'll give you guys a tour.
Awesome.
There you go.
Cool, guys. We appreciate it. Bobby, thanks again, man.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Thank you guys so much for letting me yap at you.
Of course. Absolutely. We'll see y'all next time. Appreciate it.
Thanks.